Experts have great difficulty identifying who is at risk for suicide. Indeed, research finds they are no more accurate than chance in predicting which patients in a psychiatric emergency room are likely to attempt suicide in the next 6 months. But there is new hope. Something called biomarkers are now helping scientists find who is at greatest risk. Here with the story is WSJ reporter Andrea Petersen. Andrea, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
This is certainly a pressing concern because U.S. suicide rates are on the rise, aren't they?
That's right. They've jumped 24% between 1999 and 2014.
And that's not because there aren't risk factors that we know about, correct?
Right. There's sort of widely accepted risk factors, being male, a recent job loss or relationship loss, a history of mental illness. Those are all clear risk factors, but they're not specific enough to really be of much help.
And even mental health professionals who see patients regularly have trouble identifying who might be most at risk, correct?
That's right. The way professionals assess risk is really by asking patients. And unfortunately, a lot of patients conceal.
Right, absolutely. So tell us about these new biomarkers. What are they exactly, and why is the mental health field so excited about this new research?
Well, biomarkers are basically just things like patterns of brain activity on an fMRI scan, or even substances in the blood like cortisol, things that are measurable. And they're already getting some interesting results. There's a study, some folks at NIMH have actually looked at severely depressed people and found that those who have more time awake between 4 and 5 a.m. are actually a greater risk of making a suicide attempt.
That's fascinating. Something as specific as that.
Right.
Being awake between 4 and 5 a.m. And there were other surprising things I read in your story, things like injuries and burns.
That's right. Well, these researchers at Harvard are doing a really massive project where they're crunching the medical records of 1.7 million people. There's 30,000 bits of data that goes into this, and they're finding that yes, the widely accepted risk factors are important, but these unusual things like rib fractures, things like infections.
And gastrointestinal problems.
Right, things that a doctor may not think as something that indicates self-harm, but do predict risk.
And are there also some unconscious biases that
Right, some of the same researchers at Harvard have actually done something using implicit cognition, which is basically just uncovering unconscious bias towards self-harm. And they're doing really interesting work where they take a test that seems very simple, where you have to classify words related to me, not me, life, and death. And they found that among people who have visited a psychiatric emergency room, those who are quickest at classifying death and me words had actually 3 times the number of suicide attempts within the next 6 months.
So it sounds like a quick and easy test that a psychologist could give a patient. Fascinating stuff. Andrea, thank you so much for telling us about it.
Thank you.